Welcome to this week's episode of TTIH News. That's short for Tuesday's Today in History. The date, April 21st, and what a day in history it was. Let's bring our senior editor in charge, Andrea Johns, for this story. Andrea.
I'd like to tell you about a battle that happened in Texas in 1836. This story is about the Battle of San Jacinto, which took place in present-day Harris County, Texas. It was the decisive battle in the Texas Revolution. Led by General Sam Houston, the Texan army engaged and defeated General Antonio Lopez, who led the Santa Anna Army. The fight lasted a whopping 18 minutes. Yep, 18 minutes. By mid-May, Santa Anna, who had been taken prisoner during the battle, signed a peace treaty at Velasco, Texas, in which he recognized Texas's independence in exchange for his freedom. Back to you, Barry.
Thanks, Andrea. I've got a couple of interesting stories that just came across the wire. The first one about two boys. Their names, Romulus and Remus. The boys were twins and their mother was a princess named Rhea Silvia. The father, well, he was the famous fierce Roman god of war whose name was Mars. Romulus and Remus are said to have founded the city of Rome this day in history, April 21st, 753 BC. The next story I have for you happened in 1989, where 100,000 students gathered at Beijing's Tiananmen Square to voice their discontent for China's authoritative communist government. This was the beginning of mass demonstrations in Tiananmen Square. After many weeks of protest, in May of the same year, the Chinese government declared martial law in the city. In June, massacres by Chinese troops killed hundreds of demonstrators and arrested thousands of protesters and other suspected dissidents, causing a shock and anger around the world. Noah, it looks like you have another story about Marc Anthony. Tell us all about him.
So, Dad, back in 43 BC, the Battle of Mutana was fought on this day between the forces of Marc Anthony and the forces of Octavian. The battle took place only 1 week after the bloody and uncertain Battle of Forum Galorium that ended with heavy losses on both sides. Hannah's got an interesting story. What do you have for us today?
I went to go to the fair. Okay, so in 1965, the year after my dad was born, the New York World's Fair opened for its last time. The fair held over 140 pavilions, 110 restaurants for 80 different nations, 24 U.S. states, and over 45 corporations to build exhibits or attractions at Flushing Meadows Corona Park in the Queens, New York City. Back to you, Dad.
Let's head back to Andrea, where she has two stories for us. Andrea?
The Maryland Toleration Act, passed in the American colony in 1649, it allowed freedom of worship for all Christians, but also pronounced that anyone who rejected the divinity of Jesus Christ would be sentenced to death. Then, in 1918, Manfred von Richthofen, who was believed to have downed 80 enemy aircraft during World War I, was himself shot down and killed while in action over France. The German ace is better known to you as the Red Baron. Back to you, Barry.
This story is based on one of those highfalutin kings over in England in 1509. England's King Henry VII died and was succeeded by his 17-year-old son, Henry VIII. Henry VIII is best known for 6 marriages and for his disagreement with Pope Clement VII on the annulment of his first marriage that led Henry to initiate the English Reformation that separated England from the Catholic Church. Seems like a pretty selfish guy to me. So anyway, Hannah, Noah, are you ready for the lightning round? Are you ready to rumble? Lightning round!
1789, John Adams was sworn in as the first Vice President of the United States. He was sworn in 9 days before George Washington was sworn in as President.
1526, the first battle of Pain-Pat, the Central Asian conqueror, Barber, defeated the Sultan Ibrahim Lodi, thus establishing the Mughal Empire in India.
1820, the Danish scientist Hans Christian Ørsted is the first person to identify electromagnetism when he observed the movement of a compass needle.
1794, New York City formally declared the coast of Ellis Island to be publicly owned. They did this so they could build forts to protect New York City from future British attacks.
1967, Russia's communist dictator Joseph Stalin's daughter Svetlana arrived in the New York City after defecting to the U.S.
1956, Elvis Presley first hit the record Heartbreak Hotel, becomes #1 on the Billboard charts.
1998, astronomers announced that they had discovered possible signs of a new family of planets orbiting a star that is 220 light years away.
1995, the Boston Celtics played their final game at Boston Gardens. The Celtics had played there since 1946. In their final game, the Celtics lost to the New York Knicks by a score of 98-92.
Thanks, Hannah and Noah. As always, a great job. Okay, I'll leave you with one final note before I turn it over to Andrea for our final story. Well, in 1930, All Quiet on the Western Front, based on the novel by Eric Maria Remarque, premiered in Los Angeles. It went on to win the Academy Awards Outstanding Production for 1930. Andrea, it's time for the Deep Dive.
I have attached a deep dive lesson plan for the next subject where your homeschool family can dive deeper into the fascinating subject that we here in America call the U.S. Mint. It was the year 1862 that Congress established the U.S. Mint in Denver, Colorado. Today we have 4 United States mints located in the cities of Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, and West Point. On a typical day, the Mint will produce 30 million coins worth about $1 million. You can tour the U.S. Mint in Washington, D.C. for free, but you'll need to sign up for it in advance. This reminds me, we probably need to do a video on how to go on a homeschool learning vacation in Washington, D.C. There are lots of things to see there, and much of it is free. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you spending time with us for Tuesdays Today in History. We're going to close this episode with Hannah and Noah for
Famous Birthdays in History.
1619, Jan van Riebeeck, the Dutch navigator and colonial administrator who founded Cape Town in South Africa, was born.
1774, Jean-Baptiste Biot, a French physicist, astronomer, and mathematician who established the reality of meteorites, made an early balloon flight, and studied the polarization of the light, was born.
1816, English novelist Charlotte Bronte was born in Thornton, West Yorkshire.
1926, Elizabeth Alexander Mary Windsor, better known as Queen Elizabeth II, was born.
History is fascinating. So many things happen every day all around us and have for thousands of years. You can discover more about interesting history that happened on this day or any other day by searching online or visiting your local library.
Please hit the like button at the bottom of the screen. It's what keeps us making these videos. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell so you'll be one of the first to know as new videos are released.
In the famous words of Hans Georg Gadamer, history does not belong to us, we belong to it. Until next time, happy homeschooling! Today's episode has been brought to you by Homeschool Today with Andrea Johns, featuring Tuesdays Today in History.